Welcome everybody, my name is Paul. I'm a country realtor and my specialty is rural property and farms, homesteads and lots and that sort of thing. I practice in the western part of Virginia near Lexington, beautiful Shenandoah Valley, and I urge people to watch some of my other videos and research that area of the country a little bit because Virginia has so many homesteads. Everywhere I go, where I drive, I just see little farms, little properties. Sometimes people have a regular job, maybe a teacher or whatever, policeman, fireman or whatever, and then they have some cows or some chickens or goats, or maybe they've inherited some property from their parents and so on. So homesteading is a very wonderful way of living, and I'm very fond of it myself, even though I've traveled a lot and I've had an opportunity to be in quite a few big cities. I still prefer the really quiet rural life. Now, even though there's a lot of beautiful open space in rural areas, a lot of people, especially if you're young, you're starting a little home, you don't really want to pay for a really giant home, and you want to have everything that you really need, but you need to find a way to be really efficient. So in the same way we get frugal with our money, we get a little bit nitpicky about things sometimes and whether we should spend some money. The same way is space. If you look at the interior of the residence that you have, and you start thinking about where's the best place to put things. And a lot of times, I walk into homes when I'm as a realtor and I see a lot of different homes, and some of them I walk in like, that just feels like feng shui or whatever, just like, that's just a nice flow, everything just kind of moves nicely in this home and everything's lovely and just the right amount of occupation of furniture and so on. And other times I watch in and I go, take a little deep breath and go, well, that's a lot of stuff. So people get used to living a certain way, but if you live, one way to be frugal for one thing is move a lot. If you've moved a lot in life, you'll find ways to be more frugal about the things that you own. And you'll find things that you haven't looked at for 10 years and you go, well, don't need that anymore if I'm not even wearing it anymore or something. So one way, the prime way, is to really reduce your consumption. Just cut down. For example, there's a lot of things that you think about carefully where you could put stuff. What I find is if you have like nice boxes, like see this is a nice box here and inside is the clutter where all my pens are and so on, and I take advantage of decorative things like this here is just I have to have my pens somewhere, but I don't want to leave them laying around everywhere, so I have something attractive that keeps the pens manageable there and so on. So a lot of it is about thinking creatively about how you use the space. For example, I live in a place right now where the walls were fairly thin, and it's an older type of house and so on. So what I did in Virginia, we do get some really cold weather sometimes, but they didn't really build, in the older days, they didn't really build really heavily insulated homes for Virginia. And so what I do is I have a lot of books, so what I do is I get one of those narrow bookshelves that is not very deep, and I put that against the wall, and that solves the problem because it not only keeps my books out of the way, but it also adds another 4, 5, 6 inches of insulation next to the wall and kind of reduce the transmission of the heat out and the cold in and so on. So that's just one use. Another use is space is height. If you look around your home sometimes you figure out like, man, I could put a shelf up there and nobody would even notice. There's places where some people have 10-foot ceilings. And if you look at some of the older style houses, some of the smaller ones, people got really clever about how they stored stuff. They would make an ironing table that like doubles as a chair. Have you seen this one maybe? There's one that folds out and you can iron on it and everything, and then you can fold it down and it makes a chair, and then you can fold it another way, it makes a step stool. So the clever use of multiple purpose items, that applies to tools and kitchenware and so on. Now, regarding storage of things, in many homes that you walk into, boy, if you look under the kitchen counter somewhere, boy, you're likely to see some stuff. And a lot of times it's very neat on the counters and everything, but if you look inside, it's quite a different story. So the underside, for example, cabinets, if you limit what you have and then you find ways to just like the Russian doll, they say, containers within containers. See, you have a big container and you got to store all these storage containers for storing food. So you say, well, okay, I've got one big one. I put a bunch of little ones inside and kind of like maximize the use of space in every possible way. Another thing is, if you have a lot of clutter in your home, so I have a very active home. I have an office space, I have a flight simulator, I have a lot of books, I have guitars, I have amplifiers, and I have just things that guys have, and have to put them somewhere. So I hang my guitars up nicely on a wall, and they all have nice shapes and everything. And when I need to use one, I just take advantage of them. It's easy to get to, and so on. So there's ways of being clever with the use of spaces. Sometimes folding tables, for example. You can have a table, for example, this table right here is an old drawing table. Now they do them in graphic design. They have computers and so on. But in the old days, they had a little table that you could slant. And this one can slant different ways, or it can go up and down to a certain extent. So it has multiple use. Right now I'm using it for a little kitchen table. And, maybe one day if I move to a bigger place and I have a little drawing room or something, I do like to make drawings and so on. So this is a multiple purpose use item. So that applies to outside. Think about storage. There's a lot of things that people store in their home that if you look in the drawers in the kitchen, you'll see the stuff. And a lot of it really doesn't need heat, doesn't need a lot of protection. It doesn't need to be stored in all your really important space. For example, you can take pots and pans or clothes that are out of season, things that you don't use, appliances that you use 3 times a year, and put them in a storage like a little shed or something where they're not taking up every little square cubic foot of your house inside. So you can have less clutter on your counters and so on if you find ways to put things out of the way, like your toasters, your blenders, and so on. I'm not a professional cook by any means, and at one time I was married to one woman who had 3 different sets of professional cookware, and I go, well, I don't know what that is, but I'll just put it away and not ask any questions. So there's items that you might have, like plastic bags, cat and dog food, and cans and canned goods. You need to keep canned goods, of course, warm enough so they don't freeze or something, but there's many items, if you look around your house, that really could be put outside the living quarters to make your living quarters have a more open feel to it. And then, when you need certain things like the winter clothes or whatever, you go to your storage shed or whatever, or your attic or basement or wherever you put things like that. But like I said, I really recommend people get a shed, because the living space, I live in a small 2-bedroom place with 1 bath. I'm a single man, and I'm 69 years old, and I've lived in a lot of different places. But even when I was married, we had a small home, and my wife had lived in the city many years, and she's, well, you learn how to save space if you live in a city, because our little house up in the country was half the cost and much more space. And actually, where I live right now in a small modular is vastly bigger than a typical New York City 1-bedroom apartment. So again, people get clever about using the space that they have. So again, if you're not really good at, some people are really good with using space, and some people just say, well, I don't know where to put this, I'll just drop it somewhere. But you got to think carefully about where you put things in the movement of the people moving in through your house. Things that are off the side you can take advantage of a wall space in a hallway to put some books or something, where as long as you leave enough room that you can walk nicely down the hallway. But there's a lot of space in the hallway that typically isn't used in things like foyers and mud rooms. I find personally that having a mud room of some kind, if you're in and out of the house in a rural area, if you can enter through a porch or a shady room or a screened-in porch or a deck or something like that, then you can put your shoes there or something, because that's another thing that happens in a small residence or property where, every little bit of dirt gets noticed, and you can track in a whole lot very quickly if you forget to wipe your shoes at the door after a rainy, muddy day. So use of space, again, combining items. I have, for example, a whole office, and I have a printer, but the way I use it, I take advantage of some height in the room, so the printer doesn't need to be right down on my level. I can have the printer a little higher, and that way it gives me another little storage cabinet underneath it. So there's a whole lot of different clever things that you can think of. I hang hooks on the wall for certain things. Things that you have, like cords for your chargers and all that kind of nuisance stuff. I put them on hooks in a closet, so I open the closet, there's a bunch of them there. Yeah, I don't want to look at them, close the closet door, and when I need them, they're there. So there's a whole lot of thinking that you can get into about the kind of storage things that you use, the boxes. There's things that slide under a bed. There are, again, things that you can put on the deck. Again, where I live right now, I tried to put my cat food on the deck, and one day a bear got it, so now I have to keep it inside. But there are a lot of things like that, utensils and so on, that you don't really need to keep inside your house. So I made a little summary here to see if I got it all, and then I don't want to make these videos too long. But again, living simply saves a lot of cost. The cost, you really, especially when you're starting a homestead, you want to save on the cost. So keep the cost down by buying less, using multiple. I buy a lot of tools at yard sales, frankly. I give the money cash to somebody instead of Walmart, and they're happy, I'm happy, I get a nice tool. I bought tools years ago for $1, I still use it. So you could just maximize your efficiency by having knowledge and using tools to save you tons of money. If you can save your tons of money on little maintenance chores and fixing little things around your house, you're going to save a lot of money, and then you can put that money to someday maybe expanding your home a little bit and building out. And don't forget, while we're on this line here, you can buy a small house, and if you buy the right type of house in the right kind of location, you can think easily that, hey, you know, someday we can throw out another, you know, a 10 by 20 room or a 20 by 30 addition to a house. That's pretty significant, especially if it's 2 levels. So if you have the house situated on a piece of land that you don't need all that space right now, there are many homes in suburbs right now that frankly, they're just so big, and there's 3 or 4 people living in this giant house of 4,000 square feet or something. That's way, way more. You got to heat that, you got to insure it, you got to do everything. So I really encourage people to think small in the beginning when you get started a homestead. Think lower cost and efficiency, the flow in the home, containers that you can buy, and different kinds of containers for different kinds of items. If you have to store things, for example, I have a barn and I put stuff in there in good sealed containers, all my recreation gear, my tents and so on. Get the right kind of containers, put them all tight in there, just as long as the bugs don't get in there, and they're good to go. They can last a winter out there, my tents and all that kind of gear, fishing rods and so on. So they don't need to be in a warm garage. If I had a warm garage here, which I don't, but some people do have a warm garage, and I know you know what I'm talking about when you see some of these warm garages that everything is in there, and the kids put stuff there, and the wife puts there, and everybody puts stuff in the garage, and next thing you know, after 5 or 10 years of living somewhere, it's a sight. So I see a lot of that in my business. Utility space and living space. There's, again, think about your space. What is living space? Your bedroom, the real private areas, your bathroom and so on. You want to entertain friends and so on, and living space. Then there's utility space, closets. In the old days, if you look at some of these old homes, they had really small closets. They had pretty big sheds, but they didn't have very big closets because they didn't own any clothes or anything. And now you walk into some homes and the closet is bigger than an apartment in New York City. I mean, seriously. So there's a scale of size that you can get into. You know, if you have a lot of stuff, I guess you need a big closet. But again, you know, homesteading, you want to be efficient and you want to have your utility space separate, like a mud room, or I have a foyer as they come in. I close the little porch. I put the sides on and everything, and now I put some shelves in there, so now I can hang. I have a pot hanger in there, and they don't need to be kept warm in my house. I just put them out there. If I need a pot, I'll just open the door and grab it and put it on the stove. So again, to make it really simple and easy, I want to make short videos, but there's a whole lot of things that you can buy books and, for example, get ideas about how to organize the space of your home and the kind of things that you really, really need. I made some other videos about things that you really need when you're homesteading, things that will save you a whole lot of time and money. And one of them, of course, I'll say right here is containers. If you have some really good containers, because there are bugs and whatever out there and mice, so that's another story. So I'll leave it here, and I hope you like and share, and please come back and watch some of the other videos about buying and selling real estate in the state of Virginia. And again, my name is Paul. I'm a specialist in rural property in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. So thanks again. I'll talk to you in another video.